Okay, in this video module, what we're going to do is take a look at a very cool feature in DoomEdit. It's called Regions. Regions is very helpful when you start dealing with a map that's got a lot of detail. I mean, right now, what we've got up on the screen is very simple. It's, what do we have, Logan? 4 rooms with 2 halls. And basically 2 sets of rooms that are on top of one another. And we've set it up this way just to really help push the way region works. But right now in working, if we go in there and we want it to set something up, manipulate a brush, align an entity or something like that, it's really no big deal because we don't have a lot of clutter in our viewport. But what happens when you start dealing with one of those fancy Doom 3 type maps, or have you seen some of the other maps that happen to be coming along on the internet now from third-party people that are putting them together, those great level designers out there? Well, you start getting into just tons and tons of brushes and entities and connection lines. There's just so many things that are showing up in your viewport that it starts to become a little messy looking. Okay, it makes it a little bit more difficult to work. Wouldn't you agree, Logan?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So what happens when you want to focus on just a specific room? Well, this is where regions come in. With the region feature, you can go in there and do just that. Make everything else kind of disappear temporarily. Work in that room. When you're done, get rid of the region. Now, region can be found up on our menu bar across the top. Now, Logan, we got 4 different ones to talk about. Show us what X and Y does.
Well, set XY will allow you to set a region based off of what you can currently see in the top viewport. So if I was to say zoom in on just the left room, right about here, and do a region set XY, you'll notice that looking at the top view, everything outside of what I could see has disappeared. And any brushes that were touching that region are drawing. They're the only ones that are still drawing.
And as a matter of fact, it's not only your orthogonal view. Look over in your cam view as well. Those other rooms vanished.
Right, so it makes it look like, at the moment, the only thing that exists in your map is in that region.
That's right. Now, let's go and switch over to like a side view or a front view.
Now, you'll notice that we only regioned off X and Y. Z was left alone, so that means anything, no matter where it was in Z, if it was underneath your camera view, underneath anything within that XY region, it's still there.
Right.
Which is why we still have both of these rooms that were on top of each other, because we didn't really region off Z.
Exactly. Now, let's say we go ahead and turn that region off, which is just a matter of going back up to the menu bar, region, and off. Now everything's back. What happens if we did this from like a front view, which obviously is not an XY view? Let's say we did the hallways or something.
Alright, so if I was to zoom in right up on these hallways and do region, XY, it will work. Well, I'd have to get really close on those. Hang on, let me see. I had these brushes still touching.
And if they're touching, yeah, of course.
So let me get like way up right on the center. And region XY. There we go. So now all I have is the ceiling pieces in between the hallways. But you'll notice that if we go back to a top view, what it tries to do is take the current zoom that one view is at and use that for both X and Y. So as I was zoomed in on that one side, it was focused on in just this one small area. And it tried to accommodate the other axis that it couldn't see at the moment as best as possible.
Right. So while it will work over in an XZ or YZ view, it's really meant to work in the XY top view.
Right, because if we had zoomed in from here, we could have seen exactly what would have shown. So if I zoom way in, then we know that we'll have just a region around here.
Right. Actually, try this too. If you zoom back into there, and center back up right there, and do that right there, check this out.
Set XY.
Okay, now any brush that continues to touch, so we still got our ceilings and floors. We'd have to actually go in to where we're just, go ahead and undo that and go back in just to where you're touching the walls. So, and
right
a little bit more, just a little bit more.
One more, so we can just barely see these walls. And let's region XY.
There we go.
Now we have just...
Exactly. So now we've got just our halls cut out like I was talking about originally. So remember, if part of the brush is touching the area that you're in, then you're going to end up getting all of that brush. It's not going to cut the brush for you temporarily. And also, as Logan pointed out earlier, your grid disappears as well. So, I mean, it's really nice. It's really cleaning everything up, making it a lot easier for you to focus on the specific area that you're working with. So let's go ahead and reset that. Turn that off, that is. And let's start talking about how we can use regions with brushes now.
Or use a brush to define a region.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's say I was to draw out a brush over this part of the room. Now we can use this as a almost a marquee starter point for a region. If we were to go to region and say set tall brush, this will take the currently selected brush, draw off a region that that brush defined, and it works similar to XY in that that's what you're regioning is X and Y. If we look at it from a side view, we still have the infinitely tall Z, and anything above or below that brush would be included in the region, or the region would encompass it. So it's simply another method of setting up the or sectioning off the level. And as a matter of fact, if we turn this off real quick and look at the hallway, this might be an easier way.
Now you get a lot more control. Exactly.
So I can draw the brush over just those hallway section, do region, set tall brush. So regardless of how high the brush actually is, we're just looking at it as a 2D from the top view.
Now you get perfect hallways.
Set tall brush, and then we have all the hallway brushes.
There you go. Awesome.
So let's turn that back off now. So far we've basically been looking at 2D defined regions. Now, if we were to look at some of the next setups, set brush. What this will let us do is we start off with a brush, kind of like when we're setting tall brush. Let me turn off the current region real quick. So we start off by drawing a brush, but this time the Z is considered. Let me back up in the cam view a little bit. What I can do here is, you notice so far, every time we set up a region, we always get parts of both rooms because they're directly above each other. What I could do with set brush is actually go in and scale this brush out so that it encompasses the top room, but not the bottom room. And if I was to set a region with this brush by doing region, set brush, now check it out. I have only the top room. And let me switch to a front or side view, and we have nothing below it. Also looking at the region, we have regioned off Z this time, so it's almost like we have a 3D volume of space that we have regioned. And
like with also some of the selection types earlier, it got rid of your brush too.
That's right. Both set tall brush and set brush will remove the brush that you use to define that area.
Exactly.
So, and this can get really useful for cases where you have multi-floor levels, like in the case of the simple hallway room, where you want to look at just a single floor. You could go from a side view, draw out a brush over one floor, and region off just that floor. So let's turn this region off, and take a look at the last one, which is set selected brushes. What this will let you do is this isn't entirely volume restrictive. It's not everything inside a volume, it's just certain brushes. So if I was to grab maybe just two brushes from the sides of one of these, so I'll grab that brush and that brush. If I do a region on those brushes by doing set selected brushes, we have just those brushes by themselves. Everything else disappears. If we look at the region, it displays as though it was encompassing this entire volume, but that's just because it has to extend this far to include these brushes.
That's right.
Now, one interesting thing to note about the way this works is setting a region based on selected brushes will not encompass other brushes if they're not selected. I could go so far as to draw out a brush over the entire top room, stretch it out to the top, make sure it completely encompasses the entire room. So at this point there should be several brushes that would get included if this was just a normal 3D volume region. However, if I go to region, set selected brushes, only that one brush and everything inside of it goes away. So this can be very handy if you need to do some precise operations to a single brush and you want to leave it by itself for just a minute while you work on it. This is a great way to do it.
Exactly. Okay, so with that, that's really it for regions. I mean, they're very cool, very useful, and again, when you're working on really complex scenes with a lot of clutter in your viewport, don't forget about them. They can really help you out. And that's going to wrap up this video.